Wow, everything's loud. Okay, we're way down at week 11. It seems like we should be farther on than that. I guess spring break would have been the 12th week. I added some material last night. Are you seeing week 11 with me?
Yes.
Yeah, I see it.
Great, thank you very much. Okay, there is a discussion section question and an assignment. Okay, the question is pretty easy. Your feelings about the safety and effectiveness of vaccination. I don't just mean COVID. I've been around people who absolutely swear they're going to move from Texas and take their kids with them because they don't want to have to be forced into vaccination. Okay. Well, how do you feel about it personally? I'm not asking you to tell me how you feel about the rights of the people who don't want it. I'm just asking you about safety and effectiveness. But then, uh, if you have not been vaccinated, either by choice or time, it's not been your turn yet. Uh, if you've not been vaccinated, would you bother even getting immunized if herd immunity is reached? Now, if you don't know what herd immunity is, please Google it. You'll find quite an explanation of herd immunity. Okay, if we have herd immunity, all of us are a little bit more protected, it seems, maybe a lot more protected. But would that stop you from going ahead and getting the vaccination? Okay, so that's the discussion. The assignment. What is due for next practicum is chapters 12, 15, and 19. 12, 15, and 19. I'm adding a chapter right now. It's so short. You can do it. You can turn it in ahead if you wish. You can keep track of them. Or you can wait and turn it in with P4. Okay. This is not due next Thursday. It's chapter 5. Chapter 5. Uh, I put down here due prior to April 15th. That's my thinking when I wrote this. But I just got through saying you can turn this one in as late as the last practicum. Okay. It's the integumentary system. And if you have your book, again, otherwise notepad, I'm going to go over chapter 5 with you right now, even though I leave this on the screen. My chapter 5 is in edition 7, starts on page 103. You're pretty close to the end on these outlines. There may be one more after this, and that's it. Okay, I'm turning the page, and on the integumentary system, I have a picture. It's a cube, part of the skin. The skin and the hypodermis. Why do they separate those? Because the hypodermis is not a part of the skin. Okay, it underlies it. But I want you to start your reading there, please. Go over and continue through protection, body temperature, and then 3, 4, 5 to check your understanding. The diagram, figure 5.1 is very good. Then on the page opposite it, at epidermis, pick up the reading again, please. Okay, it goes through the layers of the epidermis without stop and without skipping anything here. And the next page. These diagrams help to explain to you what's going on. They're not test material. What's test material is your understanding of what's going on and what we do in the lecture. Okay. So yes, the reading at the bottom of the page, continue on the next page, stratum spinosum, stratum lucidum, stratum corneum. Next page, you come to clinical application and skip that, and then pick it up again at dermis and know the difference between papillary dermis and reticular dermis. That continues over to the next page and ends with the clinical application, followed by a figure that I'm sure you'll read, tattoos. Okay. You do not need to include that, please, in your outline. The last portion is hypodermis, and it ends with after a paragraph only, check your understanding. Above skin color, write the word stop. And you can see then we have a very short chapter to outline. Our lecture has forged ahead of our practicum material. Integumentary system will be part of L3, but it will not be a part of the P3. So we're getting a little ahead here. We can't coordinate it perfectly because, like I said, we've got 4 major sections: bone, muscle, and such, and then 20 odd chapters. It's not possible. But we can slip the integumentary system in, and then for lab, we can go and get to talking about P3. I had a quiz posted for you here. It's too early for you to take it anyway. I had to take it down because when I tried to get it to come up, the arrow just spun and spun and spun. It does take longer for the PowerPoints or PDF files to come up when it's their first time on your computer. After that, they'll be fast. But I couldn't get this little quiz to come up anyway. And like I said, we don't need it yet. I'll try to get it to you at the end of the week is what I normally do. Okay, integumentary system includes skin and the appendages. The skin is the largest organ of the body, the largest. Okay. Now, I tricked, if that's the word, some people on the first exam uh, uh, asking about tissues. Skin is not a tissue, it's the largest organ of the body. Okay. I think on the second exam, I also slipped in a question that revolved around skin. Skin is not a tissue. Skin, again, is the largest organ. The components of the integumentary system, though, include skin and appendages. Appendages don't mean arms and legs, it means hairs and nails. We're not going to be talking much about hair and nails, but we will talk a lot about the skin. The functions of the skin, the major ones are listed here. And protection from abrasion, in other words, getting scuffed, getting bruised, protection from infection, very important. Burn victims who succumb to the burn, it's not the pain that gets them because the pain actually, I understand, is not that great after the burn takes place because the neurons that receive the pain sensations have been destroyed. Okay. Protection against abrasion and infection. Infection is the main cause of death from a burn, the most direct cause anyway. Protection from drying out. That's called desiccation. Regulating our body temperatures through sweating and the production of vitamin D. Okay. How many of you, if any, take vitamin D supplement?
I do.
I do too.
Yeah. It's supposed to have quite a few good qualities.
I
My
do.
doc, my my doctor measures everything. Oh, my doctor is crazy. Anytime he finds anything wrong, he sends me out to a specialist, and I'll be getting an MRI for a cut on the finger. It's crazy. I guess he doesn't want to take the responsibility, but he found I had low vitamin D, and he jacked that up. Okay, that was fine, I guess. I don't see any difference. He also had another one, B12. Anybody take B12?
I do.
Okay.
Yes.
You probably take a whole bunch
I took all my
bunch
vitamins.
okay. Uh, yeah, the B12 helps on the nervous system side. And I said, okay, I'll try it. I can't just get it off the shelf there. And whoa, it was really good. My handwriting was the worst, or at least it had become really, really bad, shaky and everything. I took the B12 and back to normal. Okay. Okay. Skin is the largest organ. Okay, we already said that. The skin is divided into two main parts, the epidermis, and later on, when we get to it, it's separated here, is the dermis. Epidermis on the top, the outermost layer, it's divided into five sections itself. Okay. Five layers, like a five-layer cake or something, if you want to think of it that way. It's considered to be stratified squamous epithelial tissue. This is a term you do not have to know now. If you want to know it, uh, just look it up in your book, or you can wait till we cover it. But stratified squamous epithelium, I just want to get it in front of you now. You don't need to know it until we get to P4 and L3. Okay? And then we'll be talking about it a lot. Okay, but there are five distinct layers in the epidermis. If you take one finger and touch the other hand, then you're touching the stratum corneum. The stratum corneum, that's the very outermost layer, topmost layer, same thing. It can be 20 to 30 layers thick, and it's all dead. All of the skin cells that you can touch are dead cells, okay, no longer able to divide. They actually have accumulated from a dividing layer of cells deeper in the epidermis, and it keeps on producing and producing and piles up the cells above it. And the outermost or topmost layer is the stratum corneum. These cells in the stratum corneum on your surface are primarily flat. They flatten in appearance, and they contain a chemical. The chemical is called keratin. Keratin is important in stopping you from desiccating, from drying out. That keratin comes from the cells below, deeper in the skin, just as the stratum corneum arrived from cells deeper in the skin and was pushed to the surface. If we cut through the top layer of the cake, okay, or the stratum corneum, okay, we reach the stratum lucidum right away. This is a single layer of cells, unless we have a lot of abrasion, and then it can be 20 to 40 layers. The type of abrasion I'm talking about, though, isn't rubbing against sandpaper or something like that. It's instead the so-called abrasion that we get when we do physical work, like you take a broom and you work it a lot, or you dig in the garden with a hoe or something. Okay, that can cause a callus. Now, you can get calluses on your feet. You can get calluses on your hands. I'm sure you can get calluses elsewhere. Okay, these calloused layers do thicken or accumulate in the stratum lucidum, 20 to 40 layers. If there's no abrasion, like in the middle of the palm of your hand, okay, in the middle of the palm of your hand, or the side of your neck, or any place else where the skin seems thin, then it's only about one layer thick, the stratum lucidum. The cells in this layer, second from the outside, they're dead too. The stratum granulosum is the third layer of the cake going down. Just under the stratum lucidum, it contains a chemical called hyalokeratin. That's also called keratohyalin. If I ever ask you on a test, I'd say it's not going to be tricky. The hyalokeratin is the precursor of keratin. In other words, it's going to develop into keratin. As the cells are pushed from below and more join them, the layers move up. The stratum lucidum will become the stratum corneum. The stratum granulosum that we're talking about right now will become the stratum lucidum. And it will have hyalokeratin in it, which will convert to keratin. Why? Because it's getting closer to sunlight. There's more UV contact, and that initiates the change. Underneath the stratum granulosum is the stratum spinosum. They call it that because it looks like the cells look a little bit like sea urchins with spines jutting from one cell into the other to hold it together. This can be about 20 layers thick. They are alive, but they don't divide. Okay, so they're alive, but they don't contribute to the production of more cells. And
Kelly,
then
I have a question.
yes, please.
Is it the granulosum, is that dead or alive?
Dead. I didn't say it, did I? It's dead. Okay. They call it granulosum, by the way, just off the cuff here, because like with the white blood cells, the granulocytic ones, they can see granules in the stratum granulosum. That's granulized form of hyalokeratin, but the cells are dead. The spinosum going down, these are alive, but they lack one of the qualities of life, the ability to reproduce. They are in turn formed by the lowermost layer, the stratum basale. The stratum basale is only 1 or 2 layers thick. Technically, I believe most people would say it's only 1 layer thick, but it's in constant division. By constant division, I mean it's a meristem. We don't hear the word meristem too often in animal science, but we do hear about it more in plant science, where the top of a plant continues to grow and grow and grow indefinitely until gravity or something else takes it down. The neck of a tapeworm, though, in the animal world is also a meristem, growing more proglottids, segments along its length and releasing them. The stratum basale, 1 layer thick, constantly dividing and forming the next layer above it, which is the stratum spinosum, pushing everything up. Because the stratum basale is able to divide, it's given this a secondary name, the stratum germinativum. Germinativum. So now we can see what we've been talking about. Here's a thickness of skin. At the very top is the stratum corneum, flattened, dead cells, several layers thick, stopping the body from drying out. Below that is the stratum lucidum, which can be as little as 1 layer thick, or as thick as 20 to 40 layers thick if there's callousing going on. The stratum granulosum is here. And in this picture, I just noticed it myself, they're drawing the granules. Okay, you should be able to see them now. They're drawing the granules. Then the stratum spinosum, from here to here, they haven't drawn the spines, but that's okay. And finally down here, 1 or 2 layers, which are capable of division. This is the stratum basale. Okay. Now, we said there's 2 layers of the skin, the epidermis, and then the deeper layer is the dermis. It's considered to be dense, irregular connective tissue. You're going to hear me say that phrase, dense, irregular connective tissue, so many times that when we get to P4 and 3, you'll have it down cold. It's not necessary right now. You'll need it later. You can learn it now. That's up to you. The dermis itself is vascularized. That means it has blood vessels running through it. And it contains sweat glands and oil glands. And we'll see those in the diagram below. If you can cut yourself, you might have a paper cut that doesn't bleed. Well, then you haven't gone through completely the epidermis. If there's any blood from a small cut, you have reached the dermis. Okay. sweat glands, they're known as sudoriferous glands. And their secretion, how nice, is just called sweat. I need to back up a paragraph and tell you that the dermis is also called corium. If I ever need to back up a paragraph and tell you something, it's because that's a question on a test that I've already made. Let me explain it rather than read it. Okay, this here to here, this is the epidermis. This is all 5 layers that we just talked about. It looks a lot smaller here because the dermis is so much bigger. The dermis is the lighter color here and includes sweat glands and oil glands. The oil glands are up at the hair follicle, and the sweat glands secrete their sweat into the tubules that make it up. And as more and more sweat enters the tubules, there's no place for it to go but out. And so here's a pore. And you can see other pores that were shown here as well. Now they've labeled this sweat gland, but you need to also know it as sudoriferous gland. Okay. Here's the oil gland over here as well. Here. A gland is always lobed. There's always lobes if you see lobes in the microscope, you know you've got a gland. These are lobes here of the oil gland. The oil gland secretes an oily substance, but we don't call it oil. It would be so nice if we could. We call it sebum, S-E-B-U-M. Here it is down here. The composition of sweat and of sebum will vary with temperature, weather, activity, diet, so many things. Now, between the dermis here and the epidermis above, you see the wavy line. That's the basement membrane. I'm going to be looking for it in the text here to see that I wrote it in. If I haven't, then I'll verbally keep drilling it in. The basement membrane is the basement for the epidermis. And what touches it is the stratum basal, the lowermost layer. The spinosum, granulosum, lucidum, and corneum do not touch the basement membrane. The only one that touches the basement membrane is the stratum basal, also known as the stratum germinativum. I'm going to skip this because it's coming up. 3 types of glands. There are just 3 types of glands. Well, there's many more gland organs, but type. One type is the merocrine gland. Mammary glands secrete fluids, and that's all they secrete. Their secretion of either sweat, for instance, is fluid only. The best example is the sudoriferous or sweat gland, and the salivary glands are also great examples. The salivary gland, of course, has nothing to do directly with the skin, but as a glandular type, it secretes fluids and is a mammary gland. Holocrine glands are the second type of gland. These secrete fluids also, but within the fluid will float whole cells broken off from the lumen of the glandular duct. The best example of a gland that is holocrine and secretes a fluid and broken off whole cells is the sebaceous gland or the oil gland. Which between us we can call it oil gland. That's fine. Sebaceous gland is the preferred name. Sebum is the secretion. The third type of gland is the apocrine gland. The apocrine gland secretes fluid and broken tips of cells, not whole cells, broken tips. The best example is the mammary gland. In a diagrammatic fashion down here, here's the mammary gland. Okay, think of the sweat gland, for instance, and the sweat is moved into the lumen, and as more and more enters, it's got to go up and out. Over here, the apocrine gland secretes tips of cells in the fluid. They break off. In the production of milk, this is what happens in the mammary gland, the apocrine gland. The holocrine gland releases entire cells. Okay, so this produces oil or sebum in the sebaceous gland.
Hey, Charlie, I have a question.
Yes.
For the apocrine gland, why do the broken tips, what do they add to the milk, basically? Like, what is their purpose of breaking off?
Oh God, I can't answer that. I'm going to tell you that.
All right, come in with the hard questions.
Well, that's okay. I like to take the opportunity once in a while to tell people that I can't answer everything and that I won't bullshit them and give them some crazy answer so that I can feel good about myself. I'll go and look it up, and find out. Okay. The fatty layer that is below the dermis is the hypodermis. The hypodermis is not a part of the skin. It was in this drawing here, yellow. I guess it's yellow. Okay. Highly vascularized, connective tissue mostly, and connects the skin above it to the muscle below it. Okay. The hypodermis is not a part of the skin. It's always discussed for a second at least here, along with the skin, but it's not a part. Okay. Uh, it's a little early for a break, but in about 10 or 15 minutes, I'll take care of that. Here's the checklist for Practicum 3, a week from Thursday. Okay. It simply says what we'll cover. Now, one thing that might throw you, cranial nerves. That wasn't on a sheet before. There are only, of the 12 cranial nerves, there are only 2 that we're going to do on P3. And we have to. With the eye, we have to do the optic nerve. And with the ear, the vestibulocochlear nerve. So you've already been learning that, or at least you had exposure to that. Okay, so those are the only cranial nerves that I mean for Practicum 3. For the heart, here's a list of included structures. Then the brain, and you do need to know the functions of the brain, the eye, the ear. There's a lot of material, but you know, people do better on Practicum 3 than Practicum 2. No one can beat Practicum 1 though. That bone Practicum is so straightforward. Okay, so you know where to find this. Okay, the I thought I took this out because it wasn't working.
It worked today, Charlie. I took a look at it and it worked.
Okay, great. Oh, I know what happened. I took out a quiz. It was practice quiz on the heart. Okay, and that one wouldn't run. This practice quiz will run, and it, there it goes. It's the dull, all text type of quiz. Uh, the test P3 is all images. Okay, so you should try this quiz. I'm not going to go over it with you now. And we'll definitely go over it with you if you wish, once you've had a chance to do it. Okay, I check it over here. This button tells me how many people have done it. So, okay, I want to take some time with you for the I'm going to show you P3 given to the previous class. Yours will be similar. It will be changed, however, okay? And I'll show it to you, but it takes a little bit of time. So we'd run into the break. So let me give you a break till 10 after, that's 14 minutes. Okay, 10 after 3. And we'll come back and I'll run that test for you. Okay?
Thanks, Charlie.
Okay, I'm back.
Hi, Charlie.
Howdy. Okay,
Hi, Charlie.
howdy.
Hi, Charlie.
Okay, I'm hoping that this will be the most helpful 30 minutes or whatever that I can come up with here for the practicum 3. Okay, so we've left the little lecture behind. It was a small one. That's the smallest chapter. But we'll start nervous system on Thursday. That's one to definitely be here for. Well, I'm talking to the people who normally are. Okay. So, did you have any questions before I go get started with this? No? Okay. Let me share the screen again. Are you seeing my cursor in the center?
Yes. Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
that's good. Now, what I want to show you isn't loaded up. It never will be. But we would go over it together if we wanted to. But it's down under files. Now I want to do quizzes. I'm sorry it's taking so long. It's I'm not finding it. That's why. Oh God. Hang in there. If you like to see me suffer, I am right now. I'm not finding what I want to show you, and it's something. It's, Okay, found it. This was a test, practicum 3. Now it says 414. Uh, Instead of 415, your practicum 3 is on 415. The reason this says 414, this was given a year ago. Okay, so I don't mind showing it in part to you anyway. So you can see what it's like anyway. Okay, ear model. Can you see the tympanum?
Yeah, I see it.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so let's see if I can increase this. I can't. It's just a multiple choice test, but it's all going to be images, all images. So you want your best internet if that's anything you have any control over. Okay.
Which exam will this be for?
Week from Thursday, P3. Okay. There's the pinna of the ear. I'm not going to go through all the various choices here. I'm just going to go ahead and say what it is, if that's okay. This one's asking for the eustachian tube. Here's the eustachian tube here. Now the tympanum is missing. And here's the auditory canal. This one points to the same thing because it's asking instead what's the function of the structure of that eustachian tube. And that's to equalize pressure on both sides of the eardrum. This is a semicircular canal. Now it wants a function. Well, equilibrium and balance. They say that a little bit different in the answer. Detect rotational movement and maintain balance. It's the only one it could be. This is the vestibulocochlear nerve, the 8th cranial nerve attaching to the vestibule and cochlea. Cochlea here, vestibule over here. Our snail-like structure is the cochlea, where all the receptor cells for sound are located. Now we move to the eye. At the back of the eye is the optic nerve. But I better read the question before I jump to that because they may want the optic disc. But the optic disc to me is right here. So let's see if they give optic nerve. Yes, they do. And they don't give optic disc. So yeah, well, the only thing that this can be on the eye, it's at the front of the eye, is the cornea. That looks like cornea too. It's not the sclera, because the sclera is white. It's not the choroid coat, that's underneath. Not the ciliary body or retina, those are internal. So this is definitely cornea. Let me back up to this one. Oh, I see what they want. They have opened the posterior chamber here. Okay. Where's the part they took off? It's right here. They just laid it back. So it's stretched open, sort of like a clamshell. They want to know this tan material at the back. And that is the retina.
That looks wonderful.
Okay. The choroid coat is here, the black, and some sclera out here. Sclera. Okay, so what do we think they're pointing to? Let's guess at it before we look at the answers. If you were making this up, name this region of the eye, what would your answer be?
One of the veins.
Oh, actually, they do have it on one of the veins, but the veins are not part of our study material. And so now that you say that, if I were to go back to this myself, I'd put it someplace else.
The posterior chamber.
That's it. Posterior chamber. No, they are not using the word chamber. Okay, when I say they, I help put this test together. Okay, so I'm as responsible or whatever. Uh, but posterior cavity, that's fine. Okay. Let's agree to use the word cavity. Okay, all the time. Okay, I know there's a difference between the chamber and the cavity. Okay, but I would prefer the word cavity anyway because it usually refers to the entire structure, whereas the chamber is only a small portion of it here, and in the front, a small portion around the eye. Use cavity. Okay, okay, we'll try to not look at the answers first. Whoops. Okay, name the structure here of the eye. Remember, this is the one with the sort of serrated edge inside the eye. It's all the way back here. This is
Or serrata.
yes, it is, or serrata. You can tell that they're probably going to ask this one next. Sure enough, they did. And this is the one that attaches to the lens. What's this? Then here are your choices. Eliminate some of the choices. What do you come up with?
The second one. What is it? How do you pronounce it?
Ciliary body.
Ciliary body.
That's what it is. Okay. Helps to focus the lens. Light's focused on this part of the retina, which is known as what? They're talking about this dot, which is artificial. Of course, the model is too. But light should focus there. We don't want the light to focus on the optic nerve. We wouldn't be able to see anything. So what's that dot? Okay. Try it from the list. It's the fovea centralis. Fovea centralis. The choroid coat is dark and around here. They don't show much of it. The anterior segment or anterior cavity is in front of the lens. The ciliary body we already found. The cornea is not present. What kind of white blood cell is that? You see two nuclear areas here and here. And you see granules. Here are your choices.
Eosinophil.
Eosinophil, yes. Great. What type of white blood cell is that one? Look at the size compared to the red blood cells and one large nucleus.
Is it a monocyte?
Yes, it is. You know, it's a monocyte and there's no monocyte in the answer. That's why you got to proofread these, of course. Or in my case, I give everybody the point. That's okay. This is another white blood cell. It's an ugly looking one that they picked here. It's got multiple nuclear lobes. See, neutrophil. Here's two vessels cut crosswise. One's got a thicker wall, one's got a thin wall. One's an artery, one's a vein. What is this one, the one that's being pointed to here? The artery or the vein?
Is it a vein?
Yes. Okay, here's a model. We never got our hands on any models, of course. Just I don't even remember if we used models when I showed it to you the first time. But this model of the brain, this little structure here, that looks either like a two-peaked hat, or it looks like a mustache. You see it? Okay, that's the corpora quadrigemina. The corpora quadrigemina. Okay. Now, I didn't make this question up. I usually never go with that many answers. But if you know the answer, it doesn't matter how many there are. It's just how long it takes you to find it. This one wants the structure, not the tree-like pattern that's within it. Okay, the structure is the cerebellum. This structure in about middle of the brain. This is the thalamus. This structure at the back of the corpus callosum, I'm going to the back and drop off. That is the pineal body. Behind it is the corpora quadrigemina again. Pineal body secretes melatonin. Now they want to know the name of this structure that surrounds the lateral ventricle. That structure is the corpus callosum, the calloused body. Here it is down here. On the underside of the brain, these two structures sit right on top of the cribriform plates, and they're involved in smell. Those are going to be the olfactory Bulb, since it's only pointing to one, olfactory bulb. Name this structure of the brain. Well, we know it's the brain stem we're looking at here, and the farthest part would be the spinal cord. Then there's going to be a medulla and a pons. This rounded structure is the pons. And the medulla always sits underneath the cerebellum. Cerebellum sits right on the medulla when it's in this orientation. This structure we just said is the pons. This has got to be the poorest model representing the pituitary gland I've ever seen. But that's the pituitary gland. This area in here. Well, first, let's go up to here. This is the thalamus again. And this then is the hypothalamus, this entire area. Hypothalamus. This time they want the structure. Yes, the tree-like pattern. So this tree-like pattern is called the arbor vitae. Here it is. Now they want the space. The probe is inserted into this space, which is surrounded by corpus callosum. And the space is the lateral ventricle. Okay, now a couple of image lists. What's the structure of the brain? What structure controls or initiates visual and auditory reflexes? Okay. I want you to use that chart that I gave you and learn these. These are probably the quickest to learn, but toughest to remember when the test gets here. So you got to do this yourself. If you don't do it yourself, you're just listening to me or whatever. It's not going to work. Please look at those structures of the brain. Okay. Functions of the brain. Balance and muscle coordination. We just talked about that one. So again, I'm going to leave that to you. What structure of the brain, this isn't brain function, interconnects the right and left hemispheres of the cerebrum? What structure of the brain interconnects right side and left side in the front? Here's your choices.
The corpus callosum.
Yes, it's the corpus callosum again. Whenever we see it, we only see half because the brain has been cut. Saw this the last time we were together. The swelling. If you don't remember it, that's okay. You've got it in your notes. You heard it once. and the second or third time through, you'll have it. This is the dorsal root ganglion. A model you've never seen, but it makes the same sort of sense. Okay. But wants to know what these structures are here. Okay. Why are there two? One, two, one, two. Because they have two vertebrae setting on top of each other. Every vertebra has these sets. Now, before we go into what that is, let's be sure we got our orientation correct. Okay. This branch here is swollen compared to this. This must be the dorsal root ganglion going to the dorsal root. This is the dorsal side. Well, where is the spinous process we saw the other time? We don't have it. The bone has been removed from this model. You're only seeing the spinal cord and the nerves that attach. But this gives it away, dorsal root ganglion. Okay, huh? This must be the ventral root coming here. And where the ventral root, dorsal root converge or diverge, this structure is the spinal nerve. We haven't spoken of spinal nerve yet. Okay. But that's how you break this one down. This wants these two structures here, which are paired throughout the length of the spinal cord. These are the sympathetic trunk ganglia. We did go over that on Thursday. I'm sorry, last Tuesday. Thursday you had your test. Now it wants this area right around here, which I showed you. And that's the dura mater. Okay, I'm not going to go over this here without a diagram. The diagram I had in the fetal circulation lecture for you. I will go over that again with you, but I'm just showing you there will be some fetal circulation questions. What's the name of the vessel in the umbilical cord that carries oxygenated blood from the placenta? Well, that's the umbilical vein. I don't know if it doesn't matter, but when you get your test and you open it, all of your answers are shuffled. You don't have the same answers in order anyway as the next person. If you take it twice, it will shuffle again. Okay. This is fetal circulation. Fetal circulation. Fetal circulation. And now the heart. This structure of the heart, pulmonary semilunar valve. It's leaving the right ventricle here. There's the tricuspid that's coming in. Only the tricuspid and mitral have the chordae tendineae, these web-looking structures. Pulmonary semilunar valve. This is asking what type of tissue, or name this part of the heart wall. My answer would be myocardium, so let me see if it's in there. And there it is. It's a great picture of a papillary muscle. pulmonary semilunar valve, blood goes into the pulmonary trunk. This outer layer of tissue has two names. It's the epicardium or the visceral pericardium. Let's see which one. The visceral pericardium is the one that got used. Name the finger-like structure. I just did. It's the what?
Papillary muscle.
Yes, the very first one, papillary muscle again. On this side, this is the front of the heart. This has got to be the left auricle. The right auricle is shown without any convolutions in it. No, they just call it auricle to make it easy. Okay, if we look at the possible answers, because this one's giving me a little trouble, the way it's cut here. I won't pull this on you. Here's a papillary muscle, myocardium, we got that. Is this the left or the right ventricle? It's the left ventricle. It's a fooler because usually we expect the left to be shown to us over here, but the right ventricle is always smaller. Depends, of course, also on how it's cut. But this is the left ventricle, and the way blood gets out of the left ventricle is here through the aortic semilunar valve. And that's what that one is. Now, if I were to ask or wanted to ask this question of you, I would make sure you knew that this is the left side of the heart. I always tend not to do this one enough, but here it is. It's so good. This is the posterior of the heart. Okay, and these are the coronary veins, all converging to the coronary sinus. This is the coronary sinus, just as it enters into the right atrium. Another fetal circulation question. Okay, name this chamber. Well, it's pointing to this one, and this chamber is the right ventricle. Here's the left side. Again, looking at how large it is. Somebody has cut the heart, and they're looking at it from the posterior, whereas you and I would normally look at it from the anterior. Okay, but just by the size, you should know. Name this valve. Okay, this is on the large side of the heart. Now see here, this one is the other half of it. These are both left ventricle. See that picture? Left ventricle. It's the same picture. Okay. And entering into the left ventricle must be the mitral valve. structure of the chords, well, I don't think anybody ever misses chord A, tendon A. The structure here, the IV septum. And at the tip of the heart is the apex. This is a, well, what would you call that? Name this structure of the heart. First off, we look at it, we can tell that this is the right ventricle with the pulmonary semilunar valve that we saw earlier. This is going to be the tricuspid valve. But what's that part of the valve called? Then use the oh, they just want to take and ask you tricuspid valve. Okay. I thought they wanted cusp of the valve, but then that, of course, would have had to have been one of the answers, and it wasn't. So I immediately have to switch and go with tricuspid valve. This corrugated lining of the, in this case, left ventricle, is the trabeculae carneae. Okay, here we go. Identify the vessel. In all of these identification ones, we hope to have nice, clear dissections. We never get it perfect. We want this vessel here. This is the heart to get your orientation. The superior vena cava here. Here's the brachiocephalic and brachiocephalic. So what's the name of this one?
Superior vena cava.
Superior vena cava. Now, this one here is a mammary. It'll go up and then it'll branch right and left. And here's the mammary artery coming to join it. What is this? This is a vertebral vein underneath the superior vena cava. Vertebral veins, if we're going to find them, are most easily located under the superior vena cava, like this one, or under either or both of the brachiocephalic. Now it wants to know the name of this vessel here, which I just gave to you. Can you find it?
The mammary. I have a quick question though. On the picture that we have of the cats, it actually looks like the mammary is inferior to the vertebral. And on here, it looks like it's very slightly superior.
It is superior. Okay.
So
and
is that common?
No. Are you talking about a picture or that drawing?
The drawing.
No, the drawing's wrong.
Okay.
Okay. I mentioned it and I said I'd fix it, and I haven't fixed it. Okay. It's my fault. I said for the time being, mammary arteries and vertebral artery and vertebral veins on those drawings. Don't go anywhere near it. Okay.
All right. I'll make an extra note of it.
Okay. I have fixed that drawing so many times and then lost wherever it went. I posted it, then it's gone. But I'll get to it. Okay. So here it is. The vertebral is underneath. Underneath. Okay, here the vein where the superior vena cava splits right and left going up to the arm and head. This is the brachiocephalic. This artery going up the side of the trachea, actually on both sides, is found to be the carotid artery. It's nice when you get a good picture like this. I mean, I consider this a good picture. You can use it for so many questions. When we have a face-to-face lab and you're in the classroom looking at these, we can only use this guy for a couple of questions. And then we got to go on to the next cat. And it's always inferior. So small, small gift, I guess. Okay, I love this. What's this one over here? This blue one, I could have just shown, well, asked the red one. These are the femoral. Okay. Aorta, external, iliac, femoral. Okay. Here's the abdominal aorta down here. And coming off of it, about at belly button level, and going up and attaching to the colon. This is the inferior mesenteric. Inferior mesenteric. For the arterial system, which is a little bit different in the cat than the human. That's one spot where they don't mesh. Here's the aorta again, comes down and splits, and this is the external iliac. External iliac. If you don't go with the splits but go straight ahead, there's actually a little tiny piece of aorta to here, and then this is the internal iliac, and this is the internal iliac. Well, now it's, I just said it. There's the internal iliac. Number 69 points to this portion, and the answer would be aortic arch. You would pick from the possibilities down here, and I think you'd quickly find that. Number 70, right at the level of the scapula and the head of the humerus. This is the axillary, in this case, our artery. Since it's multiple choice, you can tell you don't have to say right or left, artery or vein. This one going up the side of the head is the external jugular vein. Whether it's an artery or a vein, the one that goes up over the shoulder, this one is the I'm sorry, this is the subclavian. This is the subclavian. Subclavian becomes the axillary down here and the brachial down here. Subclavian is over here and the vein is here. This one's pointing to the red structure here in the human. That's going to be the internal iliac artery. Here you have the aorta, abdominal aorta. Then you have the external iliac. And here's the internal iliac. This piece going across is meant to represent the deep femoral. And after the deep femoral, we have the femoral artery and vein. The vena cava here, vena cava, common iliac vein, common iliac vein, external iliac again. Internal iliac vein is here and here. Not clear in this picture to me, but that's why I guess it wasn't picked. External iliac out here. Aorta, and the small little portion is the common iliac artery. Humans have a common iliac artery and a common iliac vein. Cats have a common iliac vein, but they do not have a common iliac artery. Down here, this is the femoral artery, femoral artery. Here's your bowl with the pelvis. Okay, on this head, I don't think I've gone over this with you yet, but it's so simple. Going over it here is probably enough. It wants to know some of the arteries that are going up to the skull. This one, number 77, is the common carotid. It happens to be the left common carotid. The external carotid artery is here. And the internal carotid is here. We'll see this again in a moment, I know. The artery that is going up through the vertebral foramina of the cervical vertebra here is the vertebral artery. I know we have vertebral arteries elsewhere, but they tend to use the same muscle name. Vertebral, internal, external, and carotid. So this time they're asking for the vertebral. And this time they're asking for the external carotid artery. When you look at one of the hearts that comes equipped with these three vessels, which are quite important. They're always attached to the aortic arch. The first one is the brachiocephalic. The second one is the common carotid for the left side. And the next one is the subclavian for the left side. These are not hard to memorize, and you're expected to, but they're easy enough if I show you. This is arch, aortic arch, or aorta too, either one. Brachiocephalic, carotid, subclavian. It's as simple as ABCs. A for arch, B for brachiocephalic, C for carotid, and S for subclavian. Your ABCs. Okay. I'm going to let you look at this one and try to reason it out for just a second, okay? It's a nice picture. It's maybe a little bit confusing at first, but as you look at it, I think you'll put it together. Please give it a try. And the answers I left showing. Remember, it wants to know this one and this one. If you need a hint, finally, as a group, let me know.
Evan,
I
if
feel
you
like we need a hint.
guess
Okay.
mammary,
Okay. Well, now I don't know which to answer. Let me give the hint first, okay? You hang on to your answer. Here's a hint. Look at this vessel. You know what this one is. I know you do. And this one's coming out and being joined by these two, one from the right and one from the left. I don't know if that helps, but that's the hint. The answer is mammary. Mammary. Okay. This is the mammary artery here. And the two of them, where they come together, would normally be here, but they have been pushed to the side to show them both at the same time. It's a beautiful picture, actually. Okay. Brachiocephalic here. External jugular here. Internal jugular here. After we pass the external jugular, we have a little bit of subclavian, and that terminates at the number 82, subscapular. After the subscapular, we have brachial. So that's the subscapular. After the subscapular, we just said we have brachial. So 83 is brachial. '84 wants to know this easy one that goes across. That's the transverse jugular. It's also known as the transverse facial, but we tend to use transverse jugular. This is the maxillary. This is the lingual facial, third one on the sheet. This one from the external jugular going downward on the side. That's the transverse scapular. Nobody misses this one. This is the renal, in this case, vein. Here's the gonadal vein on the left side coming in to join it. On this side, this is the gonadal also. But the no, I'm sorry, it's not. Take that back. This is the iliolumbar, here and here. The gonadal on this side is right there. Just tiny, tiny, tiny. But the iliolumbar is pretty obvious. This is a blurred picture, but nobody ever misses it because the vessel in the center, that is the mid-sacral. One of the muscle cats. Well, here's femoral. Femoral ends here because the popliteal goes on, and now the great saphenous goes down to the ankle. Great saphenous. Have to get your orientation first, and when you realize that might be the knee, okay, you might have it. That's the semitendinosus from before. Okay. And now you see it's the inside of the thigh. Well, here comes the femoral, and there goes the popliteal, or popliteal, some people call it. That's the popliteal. This vessel would lie behind the heart. It's a big one. Here's the aortic arch, and as it goes down behind the heart, it becomes the descending thoracic aorta. It's still in the thorax, so descending thoracic aorta. Over here, inside of the lungs, we've got a vessel colored red, and in the lungs, everything is reversed. This is a pulmonary vein. This is a pulmonary vein. This is the suprarenal artery and vein, and both together there, coming off of the renal vein and artery. Suprarenal goes to the adrenal gland. Number 97 would be the abdominal aorta. 98. Here we're lifting the heart. This must be towards the head because those are the two brachiocephalics. That must be the superior vena cava. So this one is the inferior vena cava. Probably one of the tougher ones. Got to be a couple of those. Okay, so now number 99 is being asked. and we know it's the carotid artery, the common carotid artery for the left side. And 100, the brachiocephalic. A, B, C, S. Okay, any questions? Well, I think you're going to be glad you were here. We can review that kind of material again if you need it, or not the whole thing, but parts that you need. But I know you just got a very good review and prep for the test. Okay, so what do you got for me? Anything? Okay. Well, it's nervous system on Thursday, and I'll see you then. So you can either exit now, or you can wait around and be the last one here and ask me that question you didn't want the others to hear.
Charlie, I have a question about our grade. The only thing that we've been graded on so far are the exams, right?
You had extra credit on many of the exams. There won't be any more extra credit, except for the 10 points that you're due for the last two practicums. I don't. There isn't anything else I do grade on.
Okay, so we can just add up those scores from the exams and everything. We can figure out it.
You can add up to your 4 scores so far, okay? And although some of them have extra credit on it and others don't, they're not quite compatible or comparable. But you can add up the 4 exams that you have, divide by 4, and that's the percentage you're running right now.
Okay, thank you so much.
Okay.
I have a question about the week 10 discussion.
Okay. Can you remind me of it?
It's the one talking about success of preparing students for Bio 12 and Bio 15.
Right.
Did you just want us to talk about how this class has prepared us for those?
No, you don't need to answer it. I'm guessing you might not have been here at the start. We discussed that discussion topic in class.
Okay, so we don't have to do a reply for that. I remember
No.
talking about it, but on the
No. I just wanted to get it out in the open and talk with everybody. So that was an open discussion.
Okay,
Okay, thank you.
thank you.
Okay, who's still here?